What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with another micro streamer today. This is the straggle leg streamer. I've got a tail of white marabou, just plain white marabou. I've got a body of this Semperfli straggle legs. There's a ton of different kinds of these. This is basically just a small chenille, and I used the fluorescent red, and then just fly fish food bruiser blend junior in just white. I didn't blend it with anything. I've got a size 12 46 47. This is probably my favorite jig hook, mainly because it's got a barb on it, but it's got a long shank, which I really like, and it doesn't have a huge wide gap. Some of these jig hooks have gaps that are like 1.5 inches. So this doesn't have a crazy wide gap, which I really like, especially on one of these streamers. I don't need that super wide hook gap because I'm not building a super thick bait. So I like these 46 47s. And then I just put on bigger eyes than I normally would, but these are 5mm ice. Super simple pattern. I used the usual medium viscosity solarez. Super simple pattern, but I really like how this orange shows through. It's kind of like a bright bait without being a super bright bait. It's it's a nice in between, but no, I really like how this bait turned out. Nice and thin, small, about 1.5 inches. Let's tie it up. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do, I've got my jig ready to go, threads on. I'm gonna put my tailing in. And this is it's gonna be an all white bait except for a little bit of orange. So I don't want this bait to be too long. I'm thinking it should be about a shank length past. So it'll be kind of 2 shanks long. And you can tie these as big as you want. I've never really found that you get a ton of misses from making it too long. I mean, even a 5 or 6 inch bluegill can inhale these pretty good. So I'm really not too worried about making it too long. I would almost want it a little bit longer than a little bit shorter. So I'll wrap down that first bit of marabou, and then I'm just going to put my other little stack on the bottom, and I'm going to kind of split this a little bit just to get it past my hook. And I'm not going to necessarily really focus on making it even or anything like that. I'll just put it about right there, get a loose wrap, and get that on. I want it to be right on top though, especially for this part, because this is going to be the top of the bait. And you're not really going to be able to see this anyway, but my wraps. And I can trim that off. And now I'm going to take, so there's a lot of different, Semperfli makes a ton of different stuff. These straggle legs, it's kind of a really good mini chenille. To me, this is just a really small chenille. And so I've cut off, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches of the, what color is this? This would be it's fluorescent red, but you tell me. I mean, that does not look red to me. That looks more orange than anything. So I'm gonna call it fluorescent orange. You can call it fluorescent red if you want. I'm going to come down here. It's a little uneven with the thread, but it really will not matter at all. I'm just going to bring that down all the way to my marabou, and then I'm going to wrap it all the way up to create my body. And you can kind of stroke this down to make these stick out a little more, but the first few I made, you really don't have to do that. You can preen them back a little bit too, but I'm not worried about these necessarily sticking through my Bruiser Blend Junior. I really just want the orange. It's really for the color and then to add bulk to the body, because these little straggle legs will push up that Bruiser Blend Junior just to make a little bit more of a body. Then I can come right there and I can just push all that back as much as I can. I'm going to get that one. There we go. I'm going to push all this back. Then I can get my Bruiser Blend. And this is literally just white. I've added angel hair, or you can kind of add whatever you want to this, or you can use a different color too. But this bait, the main part about this bait that's different is this orange, and that's what I want to be kind of the focal point of this bait. So I'm going to go about 50-50 right here, and I'll get just a loose wrap right behind my head. And I just don't want this too thick. Sometimes if you want like a fatter minnow bait, you just put more. If you want a super thin one, you can just add a tiny bit. But I just don't want this to be, it's such a small bait where I don't want too much going on. But this is kind of a lot, so it might end up being a fat one. Couple tight wraps. Flare that out. You can tell I've got some already coming out. So I'm going to peel this back as much as I can, and I'll kind of wrap right on my dubbing. I'll fold this back, just get it all back, and you can see there's a little bit of orange sticking out still. I want that. I could switch out and put on some like fluorescent orange thread to make it even more orangey, but I really, when you see when this bait is wet at the end, there's plenty of orange in there. So I'm going to get this thread built up, I'm going to get this whip finished, and we can get our eyes on. So with this bait, it's a small streamer. I mean, I'm looking at maybe 1.5 inches, but I want big eyes. So I'm actually going to use, these are 5mm eyes, and the reason, small minnows like this have big eyes, and I'm jigging this in front of a fish's face, and so I want those eyes to stick out, and then it kind of takes the attention away from that giant bead that's weighing the whole thing down. So I'll take my first eye, and these 5mm are pretty easy to work with. I'm going to get that pushed on right on the side. I want it pressed right up against that bead though. And I'll take my second one and get that right on there. Just make sure they're as even as you want them to be. I mean, I like them a little bit, when the jig's like this, I like them a little bit farther up, if anything. And so I'm going to let this sit just for a minute or so while I get the resin and stuff ready, just to let it harden up a little bit. So I've got my medium viscosity resin, and I'm just gonna, I don't want to overdo it. I'm gonna put some on my eyes, get some right there, a little bit more on this one just because I have to kind of squeeze it into that slotted part of the bead too, just to make it even, because some of that's going to set into that bead. Then I can kind of just spin it around this eye and just dab my dubbing just enough where you're going to build up a little bit of a head. And I can poke any bubbles that I see. And then you can kind of rotate it, get it going a little bit, and that's when I'll put my, and you can, I don't know if you can tell, but you can see how that orange, that fluorescent orange with this UV, it sticks out a lot. You can just see that orange just pops. Doesn't necessarily like glow, you know, but I'm just going to let that cook. And again, you can kind of see there's that little bit of orange that's sticking on that head. Again, I could have put some red for a little, you know, hotspot gill or something like that. But so I'm going to get this thing wet and we'll see how it looks. All right, about 1.5 inches, a little bit less. I just really like these baits to be under 2 inches, and I'm working on a couple videos that they're going to be a little bit less than 1 inch, just some tiny micro streamers. But this orange, the first one I made, I really loved it. And the great thing about these, there's 10 different colors. I mean, even if you put one of these olives in here, I think it would be a great color. And I have a bunch of little tiny chenilles and stuff like that I think would look really good. But I like how it turned out. Micro streamer, Junior's Fishing Company. Like and subscribe. A lot of streamers. It's winter. Let's catch some panfish. See you on the next one.